Hello, everyone. I am Peter Freer. I am the founder and inventor of Play Attention, who's hosting this webinar today. And help my brain's been hijacked. It's kind of almost comical, isn't it? Unless it's happened to you and you feel this way. So we'll take time today, unpack what is a hijacked brain and talk about that in depth. But one of the keys for this, and especially for listening to the webinars, that we don't want our brains hijacked away from what we will discuss today. And I would like to discuss this not as if I'm giving you a sermon at all. I would like to discuss it as if we're friends chatting over a cup of coffee. And in doing so, we need to make certain we're following some parameters that don't allow us to get hijacked from the webinar. And that means it would be really wise, very wise, to not have distractions. If the television is on, turn it off. If your cell phone messaging is on and it distracts you, turn it off. Turn the messaging off. If you're watching on your cell phone, you'll need to keep the cell phone on, but you can turn your messaging off. You see, that's part of what is part of being or having a hijacked brain. So we want to keep those down to a minimum. So let's try to do that right now. Let's reduce our distractions. Now, the reason I developed Play Attention was for hijacked brains. ADHD is a hijacker. In today's webinar, we'll discuss all about what things do hijack us, how they have mechanisms to hijack our brains, because it is a real problem. Let's go through the agenda for today. We'll discuss what a hijacked brain actually is, and then we look at the culprits. What are the hijackers? What are the common experiences we have with it? But as time we talk about the common experiences, we'll also talk about how we can combat them, right? So we're going to give very, very useful strategies as well. When we talk about the common experiences we have that with a hijacked brain, we want to talk about, well, how do I combat that? How do you combat that? And then we'll have a brief summary at the end. What is a hijacked brain? That's our first thing on our list. What is a hijacked brain? It means, typically, in a general sense, it means that our rational thinking is overridden. If you have watched what has happened since we had the pandemic, you'll note that people don't act as rationally as they had before COVID, and that we have higher rates of road rage than we've ever had before, where people are actually swerving at each other, hitting each other with cars, shooting at each other. Now, this is hardly rational over something that made you angry, somebody cut you off, something like that. Our rational thinking seems to be overridden. We get highly emotional. Excuse me. We get highly emotional instead of rational. This is, again, it's very similar to what I initially discussed. Rational thinking is overridden, but we then respond emotionally. What drives us is fear. We feel driven by fear, and that makes us very stressed and very anxious. And it gives us very, very intense emotions. You can see when I'm listing all of these that they're all connected. The hijacked brain is rational, where our rational thinking is overridden. Emotional responses instead of rational responses usually take place. It's driven by fear and stress, which causes our emotions to become very, very intense. And then we could talk about obstreperous or bellicose or truculent, pugnacious behaviors. Those are all good synonyms for having a very short fuse, where we tend to get argumentative or willing to fight very, very quickly. We also may be at the opposite end of that spectrum. We could be indolent, apathetic, unemotional, and disinterested as well. So you could be one or the other. You may be both. At different times, those two may actually occur at different times for you. May have them both. Does that make sense to everyone here so far? But there's a lot more to unpack here. So let's take a look at the anatomy behind it. most of the processes as far as rational thinking, organization, planning, motion regulation, attention, and impulse control are regulated by executive function. And so executive function actually is part of, it's an umbrella term for many, many processes. We have the umbrella term called executive function, and it is based primarily in the frontal lobes, although the whole brain is really involved. But we say the control center is in the frontal lobes. If the control center becomes disrupted, our ability to rationally think, our organization, our planning, emotion regulation, attention, and impulse control are absolutely limited or not functioning at full capacity. And so we start to think we are not in control any longer. That's the beginning of a hijack. What are the factors involved in hijack? Let's talk about the first one that most everyone here is probably very accustomed to, and that is we are all stressed. We have a stress mechanism in the brain. The brain is absolutely wired to deal with stress, but we all deal with it differently. And this has been wired over evolution for hundreds of thousands of years. There's actually an organ inside the brain called the amygdala. And it sends, when you are stressed, it sends a code red alert to another part of the brain in the command center, and it's called the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus says, hey, we're going to flight, we're going to fight, we're going to flee, we're going to freeze, or we're going to faint. Now, less people freeze or faint, and there's a good reason for that. I'll discuss that in a second. Most people run away, flee, and a lot of people will fight. All right, you're one of those four, but that's caused by whenever we have stress. Now, in the old days, right, when we were in the time of saber-toothed tigers and we were killing mastodons for dinner, we did not want to be the one that froze. This fellow that froze most likely would have been eaten. So there are less of those people that went on in an evolutionary sense. If we fainted, you definitely were eaten. So there are fewer of those people that made it through in an evolutionary sense. Most of us will fight back. We'll have our spear and we'll poke back and see if we can survive it. The rest of us will basically run and see if we can beat this thing by running. Irrespective of which one you do, it's all part of something the brain is programmed to do. The brain has this mechanism built into it. Now, we don't encounter saber-toothed tigers anymore, but we are stressed. Right? Stress is one of those major factors that absolutely can hijack our lives. During the pandemic, childhood depression and anxiety rose at 25% or higher. The rates of that, if children experience that, 25% or higher. And it's nearly the same for adolescents and adults as well. So we had never experienced anything before where we saw devastating outcomes. We had never experienced that before. Now, I live in a town right outside of Asheville, North Carolina. In September of this year, it would have marked our experience with Hurricane Helene. You probably watched about news. We made national news because it looked like a Mad Max movie here. Twisted metal, cars, towns wiped out by flooding. Hurricane Helene hit hard. It was devastating. And many people here still have not fully recovered. And it has affected many people psychologically here. This is part, we don't get attacked by saber-toothed tigers, but there are plenty of things that stress us out. Even the news today, if you watch the news, you can be stressed out. Many of the people I talk to anymore, I don't watch the news anymore. I just can't take it. They don't watch the news, which is probably a smart thing, because what the brain experiences and how you process that are actually part of this team that hijacks us. And I'll discuss that a little bit more as we progress. Again, if you have questions, feel free to type them in. And at the end of the webinar, I'll do my best to answer them. So when we are stressed, we have critical neurotransmitters, right? Especially serotonin and dopamine. And when you have lower levels of these, they can leave you depressed and decrease your memory. They can lower your attention. That means you're not able to be in the moment when you're talking to your kids, talking to your better half, talking to a colleague at work. And it makes you more prone to addiction. So these are part of the hijackers when we're stressed. The blood-brain barrier is that the brain has a surrounding fluid, the cerebral spinal fluid, and it is a filter to keep out pathogens, to keep our brains healthy. But if you have intense stress for prolonged periods of time, they can become leaky. The filtering system can become leaky, and it can allow pathogens to get into the brain, or can cause infections, all kinds of things. But typically, the hippocampus, which is the center of memory and learning in the brain, is incredibly susceptible, vulnerable to inflammation, which makes it harder for us to learn things. Has anyone here noticed that when you're trying to learn something new, if you feel your brain is hijacked, you may feel that it is so much harder for you now to learn something than before, right? So does that make sense? Is everybody here understanding that point? And Julie asks, are you suggesting when our brains are hijacked, we cannot think rationally? I agree that I make poor choices and make things worse, but I think I often have a good perception to a point. I'm reacting to the threat, admittedly not from my life. So I'm not saying that you cannot. I'm just saying that we don't do it as frequently, especially when we're under intense stress. When we're under intense stress, we tend to make worse decisions, right? Not very accurate decisions. Now, that's whether your brain's been hijacked or not, right? And then Toby says, well, what about depression? If we're depressed, it seems to be a hijacker too. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? We tend to make good decisions when we're not stressed, but when we are stressed, we do. I think Britt says we make more primal decisions. Well, they're not necessarily primal, but they are more emotional, right? When you see people swerving and actually having a shootout on the highway, and you can look on YouTube and find these, you can see them on the evening news, from road rage, because we're not making rational decisions. Somebody cuts me off and I get mad. I make a gesture, I yell out the window, and that starts the ball rolling. Now, we had not seen the likes and the volume, sheer volume of these things as much as we do now. Is it making sense? So we make less rational decisions and more emotional decisions. And that is not necessarily a good thing, especially if it's road rage or something like that. So who and what? We know the first hijacker. The first hijacker primarily is stress. Stress can cause weaknesses in other areas, causing depression, causing inattention, all of those things. So stress is one of the first ones. It causes us to respond more emotionally and more reactively than making rational decisions. So this doesn't happen to everyone, all at once and in everything you do. It's typically, it will happen when you're pressured and when you're under intense stress. And there are other things that affect us, who is actually hijacking my brain? That's a good question. Who is there? We know stress does it, but is there a person or an entity behind that? Well, you would be surprised to know that there are a bunch of entities behind hijacking your brain. And let's talk about that just a wee bit. Let's discuss Disney because it's cute, because we all have a great feel. I think everyone here, you think of Snow White and all of the wonderful things they've done. But here's what goes on behind the scenes. This is a Wall Street Journal article, and I'll just sum it up for you. they needed more subscribers. And so this is quite a while, this is a year ago. They had to have new subscribers. They were low on subscribers. So they had to make certain their customers spent more time on their channels, whether it was Hulu, ESPN Plus, the Disney Network, all of these things. They had to get people to stay glued because that's how they make their money. The more people stay glued, the more people want to advertise. And there's a huge amount of money here. We're talking about billions of dollars. So they increased their uh, subscribership because they figured out how to do it algorithmically. In other words, they wrote a computer program that would watch what you were watching and measure your engagement to that. And then they would make certain that they would give you things that made you engage more. And so this is another way that this is done so that how many people here, and I am guilty of it as well at times, you just start, what do they call it? The scrolling, the doom scrolling, right? You just brief video, brief video, brief video. And anybody here do that? You don't have to chat. You can just raise your hand if you're some of these that do it, right? Doom scrolling is also something. Our brain has been hijacked. That algorithm has got me. I want to see more kittens playing the piano. I want to see more road rage videos and that kind of thing. So Disney does it, but who else does it? Well, everybody does it. You name it. They pay, parts of their corporations are built of psychologists and coders who create algorithms so that they can grab as much of our attention as possible. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of these people I'm showing you, and plus more, far more. They all do it. And we are sucked into that hole. Have you noticed it? It's hard to notice if you're in it. But now, if I'm bringing it up, do you notice it? Do you notice the amount of time you spend doing that? You ever go to dinner with a family or you go to dinner with a friend and you look at the tables around you and they're all sitting there not talking to each other. They're all on their phones. They have a phone in their face and they're texting or they're doom scrolling. Anybody here notice that? Have you ever watched that? When you're in a restaurant, you see that? It's kind of crazy, isn't it? That you watch that happen, and we have people around us now at dinner, yet we don't even acknowledge their existence because our brains have been hijacked, and we're more interested in doom scrolling or seeing if somebody's on my email, right? And did somebody respond to that post I made? You see what I'm talking about? This is hijacking. Rather than engaging and being in the moment, the brain goes sideways. All right. Britt asks, would hypervigilance be considered high focus? Because I know when I'm stressed, I'm super hyper vigilant on certain things. No, that's called hyperfocus. When you have to get something done, you're under a deadline, you have to get it done. Especially if you have something like ADHD, which, you know, a person with ADHD has, that's a superpower to them. They can hyper focus, and if it's due in 2 hours, they can hyper focus and get it done. But that is not something that you really want to rely on when you're just having to engage with someone, which is super important. If you notice that your relationships have been diminishing, that you don't have the depth with the people that you love, because it's so hard to stay engaged and listen to them and listen to their problems and to engage and have that feeling of bonding and relationship. That is also what a hijacked brain feels, right? And we're going to go into this in more detail, but I do want you to know the major culprits behind this. One, that we're all being programmed now by our media and by our phones and televisions, whatever else, our computers. They know how to do it. They are so good about it. And they pay these people millions and millions of dollars. And they do make a huge amount of money by keeping us there and distracting us, or hijacking our brains. So stress And then, of course, the media experience. And of course, this is a spiral that we get into, and you'll find out here when we're going in this. Now, when I discuss this, I unpack common experiences. We'll talk about what it's like to have a hijacked brain, but we'll also talk about the things that you can do to combat it. Right. So, and we're going to roll through these quickly, but remember, we're recording this, so you can review this whole thing again tomorrow if you wish. Common experience: brain fog, fatigue, lack of interest, loss of control, distraction, stress, loss of sleep. These are all common experiences. You're probably here because you experience this on a regular basis. Let's talk about brain fog initially, right? And it's a common or colloquial term used for a range of neurocognitive impairments. They cause things like sluggish thinking. Now, typically, if you just came out of a surgery and they had you under anesthesia, you're going to experience brain fog. Chemotherapy, usually the same kind of thing. But stress can do it as well. You have difficulty processing information. You get forgetful, inability to focus or pay attention, to concentrate, difficulty concentrating for as long as you used to in the past, not being able to find the exact word that you wanted to use at that time. You stop, pause, can't retrieve it. Is this making sense? Does it resonate with you? And then difficulty understanding new information, such as following directions or learning something new. I mentioned that previously, that it's so hard to do when we are hijacked. So what do we do to combat that? All right. So you can see our common experience was brain fog, but now we talk about combating it. So this entire list, I know there is a lot there to unpack, but remember, you can look at this again. Okay. All right. So take a look. We will take breaks from our phone and computer. Don't spend 3 hours solid without getting up and walking around. Getting a water break. Take a short walk. Take the dog out for a walk. Just call someone on the phone and have a great chat where you can be engaged to it. Practice positive thinking. If you have a hijacked brain, when you encounter a problem, how many people here, hands raised when you get this resonates, how many people here go to the worst possible outcome you can possibly get? You have a problem. How many people raise their hand? If you're one of them, you go to the worst possible outcome, right? Yeah, that's a lot of us here. And that is from the fact that we are not really having good rational thought, right? And we have negative thinking instead of positive thinking. So we're going to practice positive thinking instead of negative thinking. When something happens, we go, I will deal with that outcome, no matter what it is. Not, oh my God, the world is collapsing. It's so bad. I can't deal with this. So you can also reduce your stress. Take out the stressors in your life as much as you possibly can. Reduce them. Live more simply. Change your diet. Your diet can be one of the things that causes brain fog. If we're eating, and this is just being right now, this throughout the psychological community, health and wellness community, they're all saying eating highly processed foods can ruin your brain. Yet we like processed foods, right? We enjoy them. I enjoy, popcorn out of the bag, something like that. But they're saying the more that we do this, the more that it can cause brain fog. So changing your diet so it's far healthier, which would be, right now the consensus is to eat more of a Mediterranean style diet where you're having more fish, a lot more vegetables and legumes and such. Getting enough sleep, another major factor in brain fog. Of course, the two are related. If you have brain fog, then you have trouble sleeping. If you have trouble sleeping, it can increase your brain fog. So you really have to work toward getting better sleep. Avoiding alcohol, smoking, drinking coffee in the afternoon. Again, that can make a significant difference in combating brain fog. Also, exercising regularly. One of the primary things that you can do to solve just about any particular ailment you have is just to increase your exercise. This will help. It helps with depression. It helps with brain fog. So get on your treadmill, take walks, do what you can to move and not be entirely sedentary, spending all the time in front of the computer. Practice stress management techniques like yoga, deep breathing, meditation. Drink caffeine in moderation. Schedule breaks in your day to avoid mental fatigue. Minimize distractions and keeping a cluster free space. Minimize your distractions, take them out of your way. If you're in a cluttered space that drives you crazy and it causes more brain fog, go to a simple spot that is cluster free, right? Clutter free. All right. And you also can stimulate your brain with puzzles or reading. Right? This is one of the reasons I created Play Attention. We give everyone the ability to use their brain to control the computer screen, to control exercises that increase executive function. And that is why we're here today talking to you about brain health and hijacked brains, because it gives you control of it. We'll talk more about that later, but that's where all this is coming from. Fatigue, right? It's a general term. Basically, you can have both mental and physical fatigue or just one or the other, right? So there are different types of fatigue. You got emotional fatigue. You feel sadness, anger, depression, frustration for long, prolonged periods of time. Physical fatigue, where you're just tired, right? Such as, and you can be tired after physical activity, such as showering or preparing a meal or running. You can have that will help combat it a little bit. Mental fatigue, feeling cognitive symptoms like brain fog after expending a lot of mental energy, such as doing puzzles or problem solving and so forth. So, it's very, very common to feel fatigued, especially when your brain is hijacked. So, what do we do? Well, remember, nutrition is going to play a role here the entire time. If you are getting good nutrition, you're going to feel a lot better internally. And I just listened to PhD, and I cannot remember her name today. I listened to her on a webinar as well, or a podcast. And she was talking about taking just a supplemental daily vitamin. And over the past few years, last 10, 15 years, they did studies that said they're not worth anything to use. Don't bother with them. You're just urinating them out. So you have expensive urine. That's what was said for the longest time. And now good studies have come out, really good studies. And they looked at people who had severe signs of cognitive loss. And they put them on just a generic multivitamin and compared them to, in a randomized control study, compared them to people who didn't take one. And the amount of cognitive improvement gains that they had just by simply taking the vitamin were incredibly impactful. They were significant. So just supplementing, don't keep eating really bad food and just take the vitamin and think it's going to fix everything. But if you change your diet and add a supplement like that, it could significantly impact your brain. And the fact that you're feeling hijacked and you have fatigue. Use rest and recovery techniques. Make time for yourself. A lot of people who are here today, even if you think your brain's hijacked, you're responsible for a lot of other people. And you feel like you should be responsible. But then you are so fatigued, you never take care of yourself. Does that resonate with some of you? You have to take care of yourself first. You are primary in that. And then, of course, good old Play Attention that I developed, that helps you manage your fatigue. All right. The exercises in there teach you how to manage your fatigue levels and can teach you how to be more, have more stamina, more attention stamina, that kind of thing. You're in control of it. Apathy, it's the lack of interest or concern. I don't care, right? It's an apathetic attitude, and you're just not motivated to do much of anything. A lot of you here are probably like that. I get bored really quickly, right? I have this general common experience, lack of interest, apathy, boredom, and then I withdraw socially. I don't want to dare even go out. I don't want to. I don't want to do it. All right. I just want to, and you isolate yourself by doing that. And it may be purposeful. There may be some fear behind it. But it's lack of interest that causes all of this. How do we combat that? Well, simple. I can get a new hobby. All right. I actually started welding. My nephew is a welder. I've always been interested in it. I bought a welding kit. I'm not good yet, but I love getting out there and putting on my mask and sparking up everything and making certain I don't burn down my garage. But I love doing it. And it keeps my brain active. Do new exercise routines. My wife has a new routine every week, and she is incredibly physically fit. You make new friends, change your diet. This thread will be in almost all of these. Go on a trip so that you have something new that engages you. Find where motivation lies in your heart. And this takes some work. It takes some time and consideration to do that. Remember, reflecting on your negative self-talk and limiting beliefs. Remember, if we think negatively, we are influencing our outcomes. Try to think positively and take a positive approach to things. And that will also combat your lack of interest. It'll also help you self-regulate. Cognitive control is a mental process. Right here, we're talking about loss of cognitive control. It is a mental process, cognitive control, mental process that facilitates how we process information. And we get to vary, make changes to it, adapt moment to moment. That's cognitive control. Now, if we have a brain that's hijacked, we have a difficult time doing that. Transitioning from one thing to the next, processing it, especially if it's out of the blue. Now, if you have an ADHD child and you change the routine that you've done for a long time, you may get a total meltdown because that type of internal regulation, right, is not there. And so you could be doing something slightly different than you, or change plan on them suddenly, and then you get this major meltdown. Now, the prefrontal cortex is widely believed to play a key role in supporting cognitive control. That's where executive function is controlled. It is a component of executive function, but we often feel that we're not able to do that when we have our brains feel hijacked. So lack of interest, how do we combat that? Well, again, here's switching from negative self-chat to empowering thoughts. This is something everyone can do, but we remember when we're doing this, you have to have the energy to do it. And it does take energy to, instead of thinking, oh, this is going to I'm going to fail, this is going to be so bad, saying, I'm going to give this my best shot. Let's have fun. Let's see what I can do. There are two different ways of looking at it. One takes you down a dark hole when you think negatively. The other one gives you the best chance at a positive outcome. Create an engagement plan. Now, an engagement plan is, how often should I meet to do this? How often should I actually practice this? And when should I set up times to do it? It's actually fun to try to organize that. Create an engagement plan. Be specific about what you need and want to accomplish in that plan. And one of the things you may want to accomplish is switching to empowering my thought process. Maybe that's something I'll do. I'll create an engagement plan for that. And I'll be specific about what I want to say, what I want to do. So I know how to rewire internally. Here's another one that's always in here. Exercise. All right. Exercising. The British did a study on exercise and depression, and it was fantastic. They wanted to know what the difference would be if they just put somebody in a gym on a regular basis to meet with other people and work out, and compare that to people who stayed home and took depression medication. The results were incredibly astounding. The people who went to the gym, socialized, and worked out reported far better feeling about their depression than the folks who stayed at home and took medication alone. So exercise is a critical, and I know most of us here probably think, oh gosh, there's the negative thought kicking in. I don't want to do that. It's so hard. I'll sweat. I don't like that. And there's your negative thought popping in. But when we see this as a whole and we know it influences us and it keeps our brains from being hijacked, there's some motivation. You want to combat lack of interest, lack of clarity, and having brain fog, being sad and thinking negatively, then you actually have to do the exercise, do the work, right? And to combat lack of interest, spend time with your friends, right? Even if it's just a cup of coffee or a cup of tea together. Do things you used to love, like going to concerts, watching movies with loved ones. Remember, if you have a hijacked brain and you have lack of interest, you won't even try to go out. You'll isolate yourself. And then you're sliding down another dark hole, right? That kind of leads to depression, leads to more negative thinking. Do you see how all of this is interrelated over and over and over again? When we have loss of cognitive control, right? Exercise that, practice new challenging activities such as learning a new language. That's a really good one. That's hard, but it's fun. If you do it correctly, it's fun. You can practice memory games, meditation, visualization, increase executive function. Again, play attention is used to do all of this. All right. So combating loss of cognitive control, then do these things. But remember, exercise, nutrition, using tools like play attention is a great one to do to increase your executive function. If we are distracted, right, it's something that prevents us from giving our full attention to something else, what is necessary to pay attention to dedicating our brain to someone or something that I need to attend to. Like this webinar may be very difficult for some of you to focus on long enough to pick up what's being said, because there's a lot of information being passed to you, which is why we are controlling it. We are recording it so that you can have this to look at again tomorrow, as many times as you need to. So you can pick out the things that are important to you and start to practice them. Start to employ them on a daily basis, right? So if we experience distraction, it could be just noise in the room, could be other people around us having active conversations, which does not help me focus. Information overload from all of the media we have, that's a distraction. We know companies are trying to keep you distracted from doing something else. They want to keep you there because that's money for them. They actually have calculated down to how much it costs them to make you pay attention to them. They know the dollar amount. Now, that is very important to understand. And that influences the way that we act in the world. Our cell phone use also causes distraction, which is why initially when we started the webinar, I asked you to minimize or mitigate as many things, right, that as you could, as many distractions as you possibly could. And then, of course, we time travel. The last one here is mind wandering, rumination. This rumination about it, we think about things. We can either exist in the past. We have about 33% of our time is spent in the past. We think about things we've done, which causes regret. And we think about things and causes us to be sad at times. Then we think about things in the future, which causes us fear. When we think about things that are happening in the future, because we're making them up in our mind, we're creating new images. And if we're negative thinking, then the images are all pretty bad. So distraction can take many forms. But if we live in the present and be mindful and engaged at this time, fully engaged, then this can be quite a different experience and quite a different life. Now, mindfulness is incredibly important if you're going to learn how not to be distracted. We have in play attention, we have full mindfulness exercises, which is pretty cool. That's why play attention is listed here. Just improving your executive function will help you combat distraction. Meditation trains your brain to stay focused and in an engaged state for a longer period of time. And we'll say meditation and mindfulness are almost the same thing. You can take regular breaks while you're studying, and that can help your focus. You don't want to drain your batteries down so low that it becomes difficult for you to focus. Eliminate distractions by keeping digital devices away. This is in a lot of these, isn't it? So this is a common thread that we need to walk away with today, right? If we're going to combat brain fog, distraction, cognitive load, all of these things that I've been talking about, well, sometimes just reducing the amount of distractors by keeping our digital devices in a drawer, turning them off, where we can be in a mindful state with our dog, with our children, with our spouse or person we live with. Exercise can improve focus and attention by increasing dopamine levels. So again, there's that common thread. Exercise, use your brain and engage it, and then make certain that you keep your energy levels up while you're doing it. Don't get exhausted. And then you can actually create an environment where you can do these things and make changes to your brain. Combating distraction again. If you are getting enough sleep, then you can improve your concentration level. How many people here, and this is a really interesting question, how many people here do not get what you would call very good quality sleep or enough good quality sleep? Interesting. There's many of us here. And that causes major problems when we are trying to keep our brains from being hijacked. Sleep is everything, because when you are sleeping, your brain is doing a cleanup. It starts filtering out things that you don't need to have. It starts really washing the whole brain. It's a wash cycle. It cleans elements that we don't need in the brain. It forms new memories and solidifies them. So even while you're asleep, your brain is incredibly active and busy. But we want to make certain we're getting enough good sleep so that the brain can do all of the functions it's supposed to do while you're asleep. Essentially washing itself, cleansing itself, and then forming the new memories that will be ours for a lifetime. That all happens while you're asleep. So if you do not have that, obviously that's a problem. Mindfulness can also help you focus better for longer periods of time. Mindfulness, if you're not familiar with it, is being engaged and being in the moment. And that is so tough for almost all of us to do any longer because our brains have been hijacked. Active listening, fully concentrating on and understanding, responding to a speaker. So if you are really listening to the speaker during this webinar and you're having this internal dialogue, well, I don't do that, but I do this, and he's right about that, but I disagree with that. I don't like this, but I really do this. You're not hearing. Active listening is really lending your mind and your ears only to the thing that you're listening to. Now, once the speaker stops talking, then you can form new opinions and ideas. But during the part where the speaker is talking, you absolutely tune in, because it's only then that you can hear either the truth or falseness of what is being said. If you're having an ongoing discussion internally, you're just hearing a lot of filtered noise. It's just not worth your time. Being actively engaged, active listening is huge. Stop multitasking. Many of us think that we are master multitaskers. That means we try to do 2 or 3 things at once, which means the brain is just not equipped. We don't do anything like that very well. You know, one of the easiest ways to see this in action is see people trying to text and drive. I was behind a person, I think it was a year ago, and I was behind a person, turned out to be a woman, and we were on a 4-lane, but she's in my lane, she's in the other lane, she's in the middle lanes, and then weaving. And I thought, oh, this person is drunk, and it's only 10:30 in the morning. So I try to get around her as quickly as I can. And I look in the window, and she has her elbows up on the steering wheel, and she's texting. So this tells you, and I actually work with the automotive industry quite a bit and with technology, putting the same technology you're using in Play Attention into cars now. So that the car can monitor how distracted you are, among other things, how fatigued you are. So when you are trying to multitask, the brain doesn't work as well. If we are directed and engaged and in the moment, the brain works very well. Then we can task switch. Then I'll switch my attention. I'll transition and pay attention to this particular task now. I'm not going to try to do them both at the same time. I'm not going to try to drive and text. Very dangerous. It's more dangerous than drunk driving. So we have to realize that. And then you stop multitasking. You set yourself to do a task, take a break from it, do another task. But do not try to do 2 or 3 at one time. It just turns into a mess. Stress. Remember, it is the normal response. We're wired for it, right? We know that the brain has certain organs in it that are meant to equip us with the ability to fight, flee, faint, right? And freeze. It's equipped to do that. But stress can also be psychological. It's not just the saber-toothed tiger in front of us. It's not anymore, is it? It is primarily for us psychological. So it is our brain's response to an environmental condition. And that is significant now. Our stress levels right now, I think for most average humans on the planet, are at the highest they've been in our lifetimes. And that's all because of pandemics, the news. Oh gosh, there's so many, the economy, all kinds of things that influence us with that, which causes us to have negative thoughts, higher rates of depression. It's crazy how stress actually influences and hijacks the brain. But of course, if we're going to combat it, exercise, number one way, using that and exercising your mind, also number one way, so that your mind can become engaged and actually learn more about these things. If your mind is not engaged, you do not learn enough to make changes. So you have to have brain engagement. You actually have to exercise physically, eat healthy, right? Sleep routine. All of this could be, there is one pattern ongoing here. Avoid excess caffeine, identify and challenge negative thoughts. When you see a negative thought coming in, all you have to do is recognize that for what it is, and it will change. But you have to recognize it, and that takes energy. Combating stress again, engage in self-relaxation, right? And take time for yourself. Take breaks when you need them. Seek out social support. We like to think, I think, when our brains are hijacked, that we can just shell up in our house, not go out and meet with anyone. But the way the brain functions is that you can look at it this way. It is a computer on a large network. And you can think about your brain like your cell phone. I hate to use this analogy, but it's pretty decent. If your cell phone was the only cell phone on the planet, you'll isolate that cell phone in a house. The cell phone's never going to get out. That cell phone is worthless, right? And it won't function well if it's the only cell phone on the planet, right? It's isolated. And we treat ourselves like that. We isolate ourselves, hide in our houses, won't go out to meet with friends, don't want it, negative thought, anxiety, stress. So we just don't do it. But once you realize that you are not, your brain functions as being part of a larger network, which is what your cell phone does. If your cell phone is the only cell phone in the world, it's a book. It is a doorstop. It's a paperweight. The only reason it functions and has a purpose in the world is that it communicates with every other cell phone on the planet. Your brain is much like that. Your brain looks for relationship. It needs relationship. It needs social community. Now, if you haven't figured that out yet, you need to figure that out really quick. Because if your brain's hijacked, many times you shell up and you won't do it. Right? Laugh more. I love that one toward the bottom. And then doing some yoga. That's a great idea. Loss of sleep, right? All of these things happen when we have loss of sleep. So that's a common experience. Brain fog, apathy, loss of cognitive control, distraction, all of these things happen. So if you have lost, combat it, make your bedroom the best it can be. And that means keeping light down as much as possible. If you have many different lights in the bedroom that stay on all night, a night light, maybe there are alarm clocks that are very bright, too bright. Keep your light down as much as possible. Even a little bit of light during your sleep can affect your sleep outcome. So you want to really make certain that you are keeping your bedroom at its best. One of the things I used to enjoy doing, but I found out it was terrible for me, is I would turn on the TV till I was ready to pass out, or I'd just fall asleep and I'd set a timer on the TV. TV would go off by itself. Terrible way of letting your brain go to sleep. Set a time to go to sleep. Go to sleep. It is something that you do purposefully, not just incidentally because your brain's exhausted. Right? Develop the sleep routine. All right. You start with sleep hygiene about an hour, half an hour before you go to sleep. Make certain that you're doing everything you need to get done so that you're relaxed and ready to sleep. That's good sleep hygiene. And develop your sleep routine. I get in bed at this time. I'm not going to have caffeine. I'm going to read just a little while, and then I will relax, maybe do a little bit of yoga before sleep. So I'm really relaxed and ready to go to sleep. Don't eat or drink right before sleep, because if you're doing that, the body is going to try to digest that food, and it will disrupt your brain, because the brain has to now say, okay, we've got food in the stream. We've got to work on that. And it will affect the way your brain functions at night. Exercise in the daytime so that your body is ready and tired enough for a good night's sleep. And of course, using play attention again, because using it to combat the loss of sleep is because we have games that teach you mindfulness and that teach you to be in the moment and actively engage and ready to go to sleep. Common themes. Develop a sleep routine, right? Take your breaks when you need it. Don't multitask, right? These are all the good ones. Develop a sleep routine and just get good sleep. Take your breaks when you need to. Don't multitask. Good diet, get healthy nutrition, exercise, play attention, and increase your executive function. Throughout all of this, we've talked about it over and over again. Julie said, I've heard conflicting advice about eating before sleep. Someone recently quoted rest and digest in defense of their eating shortly before bed. I've also heard eating increases stress hormones, the kind makes it sound like eating is stressful. Remember that sleep is about the brain doing cleanup work. The brain has to have time to itself, which is why we sleep, to form new memories, to shape everything that you've learned during the day, you've experienced during the day, and put it into some kind of order. The brain exists on order, O-R-D-E-R. It exists on order. If we are disorderly, our brains are disorderly. They don't think rationally. So sleep is that time where order occurs in the brain. And this is also where some of our crazy dreams come from. Because if you have not really been paying attention, you have a bunch of different things happening in your head. And the brain says, how am I going to make order of this at all? It kind of gives you weird dreams. It's almost like a hallucination because the brain is not prepared to sort everything. So eating is not a good thing to do near sleep, simply because your brain's saying, okay, guys, I have to pay attention to this. At the same time, I'm trying to do all this. It's not a good thing. You're dividing, not a good idea. Eat well before sleep, and then try to make certain you just have a hygiene practice and then a good sleep practice. Very simple. I mean, when you think about it, this is incredibly simple. The problem is we're so distracted and our brains are so hijacked, we can't figure out what we're doing anymore. So that, again, this webinar will serve as a great way for you to think about how to do it and just review it several times. It may take you several times. There's a load of information that was given to you. Play attention again. I developed it exactly for this purpose. If you don't know what neurotechnology is, it is the ability to watch what your brain is doing in real time. You put on a little armband, you can control the screen by being engaged and do exercises that increase executive function, planning and organization, impulse control, all of that you can learn. And it gives you an environment in which to do it. We can put the cuffs on your hijacker. In other words, you will gain control of your brain. This is very, very important. Play attention does this. This is what we do every day. If you have, remember, avoid stress, right? Because stress is one of those things that hijacks the brain. We know that rational thinking is overridden typically when we are too stressed and we feel like our brain is hijacked. It's not that you don't have it, you just don't use it as frequently, and you tend to use emotional responses. That's a real indicia of these are all real indicia of having a hijack brain. External factors such as electronic media are absolutely programmed to distract you. So knowing this should be motivation for you to limit that. You must improve your executive function. Remember, executive function is an umbrella term that's used to describe all of these cognitive processes that we've been talking about. If that is weak and you cannot do some of these things, you need to actually exercise your brain to be able to do it. It's a complex problem and it takes work to resolve it. So all of these things that I've given you are great tools. Now it's up to you to set up a program for yourself to do it. Does that make sense? If you want to learn how we do it at Play Attention, you can take the ADHD test. If you want to take the ADHD test on the website, it's free. Just type in ADHD test. You'll get an email or a text back that just says, okay, here's where you take it. It's very simple to do, and it'll tell you where your executive function skills lie into and how to repair those. We actually have started a new division of Play Attention called Silver Minds. Fantastic new program for people who are experiencing cognitive decline. We're working with people from age about 50 to 100 right now. And there are many people who do not want to go into cognitive decline. And we teach them how not to, how to be cognitively vital, cognitive vitality. That is something we're doing. If you're interested in learning about that, just type in Silver Minds and in your chat, and we'll send you over information on Silver Minds as well. If you want a one-on-one consultation with an executive function specialist, that they can talk about what your limitations are in your executive function, how to improve those limitations so that you don't feel like your brain is hijacked anymore. All you need to do is type in consultation, all right? And then the next Play Attention webinar is next week. I think it's next Wednesday. So if you want that, type in webinar and cognitive vitality for seniors, so you can put Silver Minds in as well. Someone is asking, how is Silver Minds different from Play Attention? In Silver Minds, since we're dealing with older folks, we have a full program in there that has 6 different pillars in it. One of them is Play Attention. Another one is movement and exercise. Does this sound familiar? Another one is nutrition. So you get all of these things built into the Silver Minds program. One is mindfulness. And so all of these different pillars are the basis to support Silver Minds. Another one is community, right? And another piece of it is massive assessments. So we can find out exactly where you are weak and then show you your progress over time. I hope that makes sense. It is, so Play Attention is only a piece of it. All the other things that we talked about today, where we feel like our minds are getting hijacked, Um, it's it's very similar. We are all here. There are many of us here today, um, because it's a very common problem. But there are simple things to do. However, setting up a program to do it for yourself, if you feel like you're hijacked, is difficult. That's why it's good to have someone like an executive function coach to talk to first, so that you can figure out how to do it. Any other questions? I've kind of answered them as we went along because there weren't that many, but I'd love to talk to you more about this. We can do another webinar if you have other questions. But hopefully, if there are any other questions, let me know. We got a lot of people who are signing up for consultations, Silver Mines, and other things, because it's absolutely Silver Mines is a fantastic program. It was the result of one of the staff members at Play Attention who said, you know what, we really need to take care of this. And we absolutely have our mind set to help people who are going into cognitive decline, and making certain their lives, because we have more age, right? We're all living to get older, to be older. But then my mom died with dementia. My wife's mom died of dementia. And we're like, we're fed up with this. Let's take control of this. That's the basis of Silver Mines. All right. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.